Welcome to a case analysis of Star Wars vs. Battlestar Galactica. I am Bryce Gadway, and today I want to break down what the case was about and how it affects us today. Please see the description below for my references. Star Wars vs. Battlestar Galactica is the common name for a copyright infringement case between Lucasfilms and Universal Studios. In 1978, Lucasfilms belonged to 20th Century Fox Film Corporation, and Universal Studios belonged to MCA Incorporated. 20th Century Fox Film Corporation is known as 20th Century Studios today, and that's how I referred to them in this video. According to Theme Park Center's article, Who Owns Universal? MCA Incorporated owned Universal in 1978, and after 45 years of acquisitions, Universal now belongs to NBC Universal, which is owned by Comcast. To get an idea of how big of a parent company Comcast is, let's look at some key performance indicators. Macro Trends reports the following. Comcast Corporation had $116 billion in 2021 and $121 billion in 2022. Comcast has had an average of 4% increase in revenues since 2019 to 2022. Comcast employs 189,000 individuals in 2021. They have $6 billion of cash on hand asset at year end of 2022. Comcast Corporation owes $95.6 billion in long-term debt at the year end of 2022 and has had an average of 3.6% decline in long-term debt from 2019 to 2022. Their total assets at the year end of 2022 were $254 billion. Comcast has a net worth of $175 billion on January 27th of 2023. Now back to the case. Lucasfilms produced and distributed the popular science fiction film Star Wars in 1977. Today we know Star Wars as Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. In 1978, Battlestar Galactica was produced by Universal Studios and was televised by ABC. 20th Century Studios filed a copyright infringement lawsuit against Universal, MCA, and ABC due to the perceived similarities between the two productions. Universal, of course, disagreed and submitted a request of a summary judgment. A summary judgment is a motion to have a court decision be made without holding a trial. A judge can decide to grant summary judgment based on presented facts. The Central District of California Court reviewed the facts and submitted and ruled that the works are only similar on the general level of, quote, intellectual abstraction. Both stories were a struggle between good and evil in space, end quote. As Jonathan Bailey writes in his article on Plagiarism Today, the influence that Star Wars had on the production of Battlestar Galactica would not be hard to miss. They were similar in style, ship betrayals, fashion, and themes. Saga of the Star World was a working title of Battlestar Galactica. Universal Studios hired John Dykstra, the Star Wars special effects lead, to make effects for their show. The lower courts did not find these facts enough to be grounds for infringement. The lower court favored Universal Studios' summary judgment proposal due to 20th Century Studios' arguments being unable to support allegations of infringement. However, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals did not agree. 20th Century realized they needed to do better than they did in the lower court. 20th Century enumerated 34 similarities between the two works. The Ninth Circuit Court stated, and quote, at a minimum, it is close enough question that it should be resolved by way of trial, end quote. 8 similarities between the two works that had been put forward and have been recorded in the 20th Century Fox Film Corporation versus MCA Incorporated court documents include: the central conflict of each story is a war between galaxy's democratic and totalitarian forces. A leading character returns to the family home to find it destroyed. An entire planet central to the existence of democratic forces is destroyed. There is a romance between the hero's friend, the cynical fighter pilot, and the daughter of one of the leaders of the democratic forces. Space vehicles, although futuristic, are made to look used and old, contrary to the stereotypical sleek new appearance of space-age equipment. The climax consists of an attack by the democratic fighter pilots on a totalitarian headquarters. Each work ends with an award ceremony in honor of the democratic heroes. And lastly, a friendly robot who aids the Democratic forces is severely injured in Star Wars and destroyed in Battlestar Galactica by the totalitarian forces. Clarkson and Miller write that copyright owners are protected against reproduction of the protected work, development of derived works, and unauthorized distribution of the work, as well as unauthorized public display of the work. However, Section 102 of the Copyright Act of 1976 prohibits protection of any idea or concept. An idea and how it is expressed must be distinguishable to be qualified for protection. Emily Bowick, graduate of J. Reuben Clark's Law School, writes that many of the similarities that 20th Century Studios argued on had been previously betrayed by copywritten works before Star Wars had aired. Emily elaborates by saying the stories such as Dark Star in 1974 and Moon Zero 2 in 1969 had space vehicles, although futuristic, are made to look old and used. The concept was not completely original to Star Wars, nor was the expression of the concept. Emily writes about how other friendly robots are shown in other works before Star Wars, such as Tobor the Great in 1954, Forbidden Planet in 1956, and Silent Running in 1972. Star Wars may have been an original storyline, but far from claiming copyright of its expression of ideas. Jonathan Bailey writes that tropes like rebels fighting against totalitarian regimes are far too common in storytelling to claim putting the trope in space as original or copyrighted. With what we know of the case and what 20th Century Studios presented in the brief to the appeal court, it did not seem as though there was enough evidence to persuade a judge or jury. However, the case never went back to court after the 9th District Court of Appeals reviewed the summary judgment. The plaintiffs and defendants agreed to a settlement before the trial date. Details are still unknown. In 1978, Battlestar Galactica could have offered us a different view of the science fiction genre that we could have had more time to explore. Researchers and writers Menadue and Cheer wrote about how science fiction is significant in the studies of human culture. They write about how science fiction bridges the gap between, quote, real science and science in the public imagination, end quote. Difficult subjects such as quantum physics are near impossible to explain to someone who has no reference or visual of what subject speaks about. Today, we have a plethora of movies and television shows that challenge our perception of the natural world around us. It is possible that Universal Studios could have won in a jury court, and we could have had another version of science fiction to inspire us. Thanks for watching.